All right, this is going to be Erector White Truck video number 2. And now I'm going to add the axles to the chassis. So I guess if you decide to build along using this video, the chassis rails can be set up the way that I built them in video 1, or with the angle girders or angle strips the way the directions show. It won't matter. Axles, the springs go in the same spot, the axles go in the same spot. So what I'm going to do here is just go ahead and get the axles mounted. So I'm using kind of the earlier style. So I'm going to flip the rails upside down, and I see right away I got a problem. So I flip these over. So you want your finished bolt heads to be on the outside of your chassis, I'm assuming. And so I'm going to start by putting the front axle on. And once I get the axles on, I will show you how to square everything up. That's one thing that can become a problem as you're doing a build if things are not square. Because this is an earlier set, it does have the cast front axle and kingpins, so I'm sorry, steering knuckles. And for this step, when you first put these on, no matter what type of axle you're using, the process for squaring things up will be the same. So you want to just have these finger tight when you're first putting the front and the rear axle on. And then I'll move to the rear. The rear mounts in a similar way, so screws up through from the bottom of the spring, and then the axle has 2 mounting holes in it. Those just drop down over our bolts. All right, so with those mounted and loosely mounted, you'll notice that the chassis will easily wiggle back and forth. So right now we're not square, and that's an important step that we want to do as we start mounting the other parts on the chassis, is to make sure that it's square. So what I'm going to do here is take the chassis and I'm going to flip it over. And what I've found works pretty well with this is to tighten the front axle down. So I'm going to kind of eyeball it to square. So that definitely stiffened it up, but if I put enough pressure on it, I can still move it forward and backward on each rail. And I haven't tightened the rear axle yet. So now what I'm going to do, actually I'll flip it back this way, I'll leave it in this position, is I'm going to grab a tape measure and I'm going to measure from the center of the lower axle hole here for mounting the wheels. I keep forgetting the name of those. I want to call them kingpins, and that's not right. So, and then in the back, I'm going to measure to the back edge of the axle. There's holes in the axle. When you put the wheels on, you have cotter pins that drop down through those. You can't use those holes because they're not drilled in the exact same position from side to side. So on this side, that hole is facing directly up. And on this other side, it's facing to the front about 15 degrees, and that'll throw off the measurement. So I'm going to go the center of the hole to the back edge of the axle. And right now that measurement is 17.5 inches. And so if I go to this other side and I take that measurement, I'm at 17 7/16. So that means that this side has to go back just a tiny bit, 32nd of an inch. I check it again. I didn't get much movement there. Let's see what that did. That might have been too much. That was way too much. And this is just a trial and error. Just keep checking it. And this is very similar to what you would do if you were building a chassis for an actual car. You just keep checking your cross measurements to make sure that they were the same. Oh, I'm really good at going too far. That looks good. Now we'll check this other measurement. And that looks really good. So what I want to do now is just gently slide this forward, and I am going to tighten the rear axle on each side. And then I'm going to double check it and just make sure that my measurement is still the same. Looks like I moved just a tiny bit. Let's check this side here. Yeah, just a little bit of movement. I'll see if I can tweak it just a little bit here. I think I got a little movement there. Yep, that looks really good. I'll double check over here. This step, it's a little fiddly, but it is important if you want the truck to be squared. Now, two other things that I'm going to do. I want to be able to make sure that this isn't going to slip around. So I'm going to take an 11-hole regular base plate, and in the directions, these are used for the floor of the truck and for the other parts of the cab of the truck. And in the directions, what I did is counted the number of slots or openings in the directions, and I have the directions on a sheet of paper, and I just blew them up a little bit so they're a little easier to see. And if we use the first page that appears in the manual, we can count the grooves in the frame rails. And then I go back to my strip that I made. I laid that out, and I know that I need to be in front of my bolt that I put through here. And I did plan that out ahead of time. I did that on purpose. And then it's just a matter of lining up the regular base plate from side to side on the frame. Now, you will notice that when you put this in, the way the front axle, the spacing is compared to the rear, it does create an angle on the frame. So it is narrow together, in the front, narrower in the front than it is in the rear of the frame. So for bolting this through, the way I've got these rails set up now, I'm going to bolt all the way down through to the bottom of the frame rail. And for this, if you're using just original fasteners, you would have to use the 7/8. On these new ones that I'm using for the bolts, I used a 3/4, and that will limit how much this is sticking through. Now, one of the neat things that happens here is when you put these through and you're using the frame rail the way I've got it set up, that will kind of, the edge of the rail will kind of work as a wrench. And so I'll be able to tighten this from the top. But I'm going to get all 4 of these put into place. And if I put 4 of them in and I tighten this piece down really snug, it will keep the frame from shifting side to side. Now, with the way this gets bolted together and the other pieces that go on, I may end up having to remove the front bolts. We'll just wait and see how the other pieces end up attaching, but that's just something. Sometimes you got to overlap 2 parts to make everything work, or 2 of the base plates to make everything work, and that's just part of the way the build goes together. And then what I'm going to do is, after I get this piece on and I snug it up, I'm going to recheck my angle dimensions again and make sure that I'm still lined up. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm using the slots in the base plate and the holes in the frame to line this piece side to side. And that looks really good. If you want to really get precise about it, you could always grab a caliper and you could measure to make sure you're dead on. For that, I'm just going to eyeball that measurement, and that looks good. And checking here again, that is still the same as it was before, just a 32nd less than 17 and a half. So it looks real good side to side. So I should have a square frame. The next step is going to be to mount the front bumper. And the way this mounts is in the angle girders, you have to spread the girders apart, and the directions show to mount that front bumper on the inside of the girders. So it's not easy to do. You have to spread that out. What I usually do then is I grab this with a big pair of pliers, kind of squeeze down on it so I can get one of the bolts through here. What I've noticed here now is, because I have the flat plates mounted on the outside, the inner plates will actually slide in between, and it makes it much easier to get that front bumper in and to get that started. Now here, you've got a couple different choices, or as I look at this, I've got a couple different ways I can mount this. One way would be to go through with a longer bolt and go all the way through to the inside of the frame rail. And I think that's probably going to be the way to mount that. The other thing you could do, you could use a 1/4 inch bolt here, and then you would have to figure out a way to get the nut up inside. And you do have room on the inside of the bumper because it's pressed steel. So you may be able to get a real fine tip needle nose plier. Let me grab one of these real quick and see. Let me grab another one real quick. That one would not work. I do have a real fine nose that has a bend on the end, so that one I think would work to get up in there to put a nut on the back side. That nut that I dropped, I'll find that when I get ready to stand up. But I'm going to put a nut on the back side here, and the bolt size that I'm using here, going through the frame in this direction, is a 5/8. Now sometimes just the way these overlap, it creates a little difference in the hole dimension as you're pushing those things through. So you gotta kind of twist them or thread them through, get them started on that other side. And then the way these pieces are made, as thin as they almost work as a screw themselves, but still want to put a screw on the back side of this. And I'm liking this. It's going to give a really clean, nice look to the front of the truck here. All right, so that looks real good. Just to double check, and I do notice I have a little bit of twist here. So that as I add more parts, that twist, right now I can put that twist in it just the way the parts are together right now. But I'm going to go back here and double check once more. And looks like with that twisting, I maybe moved a little bit. So what I'll end up doing here is, as I do the assembly of the chassis, you're going to see that I'm going to check this. Yeah, it's right back in line now. So I'm going to keep checking this as I add other parts on here. Once I get it to where I have more strips on, especially as you start putting 4 bolts into a strip, that will help. The other thing that I like to do is add a cross brace here at the rail. And the way I've found works really well to do this is to use 2 of the flat 11-hole strips, and you just start working back. If you want, you can put here, I'll overlap them 4 strips or 4 holes. And you just start working back until you find a spot where that lines up and it's not in the way of anything underneath. I'm going to go one more strip here. So I'm 3 strips. And 3 is too wide at the back of the chassis. So I'm going to go back to 4. And this brace probably will not stay in. I just like it to help hold things square. So I need to go to a 3/4 inch screw in this direction. And that's going to be one that's tight to get on. So this is an Erector wrench from one of the later sets, and these come in really handy. So you slide the nut down in here. There's a little pressed steel cutout that holds it in place. And this has become a really good helper for me when you get into these tight spots. All right. Sorry, I had that piece headed off by one hole. So that does happen. I've built some real cars, and every once in a while you make that mistake when you're doing a real build as well. Get a piece a little crooked and you got to fix it. So all right, so that is the axles mounted to the chassis, and the next step is going to be to mount. I'm going to go ahead and mount the hood and the grill, and then I'll start building the cab back here. I do plan to use the bed, and I think that I'm going to do this as a wrecker. So that's kind of my plan right now, if things don't change in the way it looks. But again, this brace probably will be temporary, but we'll see. If it's needed, I'll leave it there. I may move one right to the back of the chassis. I did want to mention, working on these Erector sets, this is a screwdriver that I purchased at a at a toy swap meet that was in Green Bay, Wisconsin a couple of weeks ago. And this is number 9701, and it's made by a company called Proto, Proto, and they were made in Los Angeles, California. And I found out that this is a super high quality screwdriver. It is fantastic for working on any of the Erector parts. The tip on this thing will work on the bigger screws and it bites them really well. It'll work on the little tiny ones that hold gears and pulleys on. And I love it. It was on a table that was a dollar table. So as I looked at these on eBay, they sell for anywhere from about $10 to $20 a piece. There's a set of screwdrivers that of this style. I believe there's maybe 8 in the set on eBay, and the asking price for that is a few $100s. So I'm really thankful that I purchased this. The old standby that came with the Erector sets, this works great. I know that there's some Erector set screwdrivers that had a wooden handle on them similar to this that also work well, but having a good quality screwdriver for tightening these up and loosening things, that really keeps you from damaging the heads of the bolts or the heads of the screws. So that is video number 2. Thanks again for watching.